Welcome to Epic World History. From the cradle of Mesopotamia rose a power unlike any the world had ever known, the Assyrian Empire. Forged in war, ruled by ambition, and remembered through stone and script, it became a symbol of human might and innovation. From the rise of Ashur to the fall of Nineveh, this is the story of glory, conquest, and legacy. In the cradle of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers carved life into the desert, a new power was quietly awakening around 2500 BCE, the Assyrian Empire. From the fertile plains of Ashur, named after their fierce god of war, a determined people began shaping their destiny. The Assyrians were more than warriors. They were builders, traders, and visionaries who learned to command through discipline and faith. As small city-states rose and fell across Mesopotamia, Ashur stood resilient, fortified by ambition and divine purpose. Through alliances, diplomacy, and the sword, they expanded their influence, laying the first stones of what would become one of the most formidable empires in ancient history. In the 8th century BCE, a new vision rose from the heart of Assyria. King Tiglath-Pileser III. He was more than a warrior king. He was an architect of empire. With unmatched strategy, he reorganized the army into a disciplined force, introduced iron weapons, and built roads for swift campaigns. From the Zagros Mountains to the Mediterranean Sea, his legions carried the Assyrian banner with precision and power. Under his command, small kingdoms fell and great cities bent the knee, bringing trade, tribute, and order to lands once divided. His reign marked the birth of Assyria's golden age, an empire united by strength, governed by structure, and destined to shape the ancient world for centuries to come. After the era of Tiglath-Pileser III, the torch of empire passed to another formidable ruler, King Sargon II. A master strategist and visionary leader, Sargon continued the relentless march of Assyrian expansion. His conquest of Samaria, the capital of the ancient kingdom of Israel, demonstrated his precision in both planning and execution. Under his command, Assyria extended its reach across the Near East, uniting distant provinces under one rule. Cities that once defied the empire now bore its seal, and trade routes thrived under imperial protection. Sargon's reign represented the height of Assyrian power, a moment when the empire stood unchallenged. Its influence stretching from the mountains of Anatolia to the fertile lands along the Levantine coast. Amid the vast legacy of Assyria, one name stands above the rest, King Ashurbanipal. A ruler of unmatched ambition, he combined the mind of a scholar with the strength of a conqueror. During his reign, the Assyrian Empire reached its greatest extent, stretching from the Nile in Egypt to the deserts of Arabia. Yet, Ashurbanipal's glory was not only measured in battle. Within his grand palace at Nineveh, he founded the world's first great library, a sanctuary of knowledge preserving thousands of clay tablets in cuneiform. These records captured science, poetry, medicine, and history, offering modern scholars a priceless window into the ancient world. Ashurbanipal's rule embodied both intellect and empire, the sword and the scroll united in one timeless legacy. At the height of their power, the Assyrian army was the embodiment of precision, discipline, and fear. No ancient force rivaled their mastery of warfare. From the thunder of chariot wheels to the hiss of thousands of arrows in flight, the Assyrians brought organized destruction to every battlefield. Their engineers built towering siege engines, battering rams, and mobile bridges, breaking through walls that once seemed uncheckable. Psychological warfare, swift attacks, and iron discipline became their trademarks. To their enemies, the sight of Assyrian banners on the horizon meant only one thing: conquest was near. The Assyrian army was not just a military force. It was a machine of empire, built to dominate and endure. By the 7th century BCE, the Assyrian Empire stood at the very peak of its power. A civilization unmatched in wealth, architecture, and influence. Under Ashurbanipal and his powerful predecessors, Assyria stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea, commanding vast trade routes and diverse peoples. The empire's cities glittered with monumental palaces, grand temples, and intricate reliefs carved in stone. Within these walls, artists, scholars, and engineers flourished, crafting a culture of refinement and innovation. Behind the army's strength lay a network of administrators, merchants, and builders who sustained its greatness. The Assyrian world was more than conquest. It was a triumph of order, knowledge, and art, a beacon of civilization that illuminated the ancient Near East. By the late 7th century BCE, the mighty Assyrian Empire, once invincible, began to tremble from within. Decades of relentless conquest had stretched its borders and drained its strength. The wealth that once flowed into Nineveh now fed corruption and rivalry among nobles. Civil wars erupted as generals and governors fought for power, fracturing the unity that once held the empire together. Beyond its borders, subject nations grew restless, sensing weakness in their conqueror. Trade slowed, armies faltered, and loyalty began to fade. The empire that once seemed eternal now faced the slow erosion of its power, not by the sword of its enemies, but by the weight of its own ambition. In 612 BCE, the heart of the Assyrian Empire fell silent. The once glorious city of Nineveh, adorned with towering walls and shining palaces, faced its greatest trial. A powerful alliance of Medes, Babylonians, and Scythians united against the empire that had once dominated them. For months, the coalition laid siege to the city, breaking through its mighty defenses with relentless determination. Flames consumed the temples and palaces that had symbolized Assyria's power. The roar of victory replaced the echoes of empire. When the smoke cleared, Nineveh, the pride of the ancient world, was no more. Its fall marked the final chapter of Assyria's reign, an end not born of weakness alone, but of the unstoppable tide of history itself. Though the Assyrian Empire vanished from the maps, its legacy lived on through time. The ruins of Nineveh still whisper of a civilization that once shaped the ancient world. The Assyrians mastered the art of empire, in administration, warfare, and culture, setting standards that later powers would follow. Their libraries preserved the wisdom of ages. Their architecture inspired future cities, and their art captured the grandeur of kings and gods. Innovations in governance, logistics, and military organization became the foundation for empires yet to come. Even in ruin, the Assyrian spirit endures, carved in stone, written in clay, and remembered as one of humanity's earliest visions of power and progress. Though their empire had fallen, the Assyrians' influence rippled far beyond their borders. Neighboring civilizations, from the Babylonians to the Persians, drew inspiration from Assyria's mastery of organization, strategy, and governance. The Assyrians perfected systems of taxation, communication, and record-keeping that later empires would refine. Their military formations became models for armies across the Near East, and their monumental art inspired the palaces of Babylon and Persepolis. Even centuries after Nineveh's fall, echoes of Assyrian culture endured, in language, architecture, and the art of empire itself. In many ways, the story of Assyria never truly ended. It lived on through the very civilizations it once ruled. The Assyrians were pioneers in military strategy, employing innovative tactics and advanced technologies. They were among the first to use iron weapons extensively, which gave their armies a significant edge in battle. The Assyrian army also perfected the use of siege weapons, including battering rams, siege towers, and catapults, allowing them to break through even the most fortified cities. Their armies were organized into specialized units, such as archers, cavalry, and infantry, each playing a crucial role in their campaigns. Assyrian culture was deeply intertwined with its religious beliefs. The Assyrians were polytheistic, worshipping a pantheon of gods, with Ashur, the god of war, at the head. Temples and ziggurats dedicated to their gods dotted the landscape, serving as both places of worship and symbols of their imperial power. Assyrian art often depicted their gods in majestic forms, reflecting their belief in divine protection over their empire. Their religious ceremonies and festivals were grand affairs, and they believed that their military success was a direct result of divine favor. One of the most infamous aspects of Assyrian rule was their brutal policy of exile. When conquering a city or region, the Assyrians would often deport large portions of the population to distant lands. This not only disrupted the local economy and culture, but also served as a method of control. By scattering populations across their empire, the Assyrians made it difficult for conquered peoples to mount effective rebellions, ensuring their dominance. The Assyrians were also pioneers in the field of writing. They used cuneiform script to record their laws, treaties, military campaigns, and religious texts. These records have provided modern historians with a wealth of information about Assyrian society, politics, and warfare. The Assyrians took great pride in documenting their victories and royal achievements, often inscribing them on stone walls or clay tablets. Their extensive use of writing ensured that their empire's history would be preserved for future generations. Assyrian art was grand and highly detailed, often depicting scenes of warfare, royal conquests, and religious rituals. The Assyrians were skilled in the use of stone reliefs, creating intricate depictions of battles and royal ceremonies. Their architecture was similarly impressive, with the construction of massive palaces and fortified cities. The walls of these structures were often adorned with detailed reliefs, illustrating the empire's military prowess and divine protection. One of the most significant events in Assyrian history was the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel. In 722 BCE, King Shalmaneser V of Assyria besieged and captured the capital of Israel, Samaria. The 10 northern tribes of Israel were deported, and their land was incorporated into the Assyrian Empire. This event marked the end of the independent kingdom of Israel and the beginning of Assyria's dominance over the region. Although the kingdom of Judah managed to survive longer than Israel, it was not immune to Assyrian influence. In 701 BCE, King Sennacherib of Assyria marched into Judah, besieging Jerusalem. Although Jerusalem did not fall, the Assyrians severely weakened Judah, forcing King Hezekiah to pay tribute. The Assyrians were able to dominate the region and extract resources, further cementing their power in the ancient Near East. The final blow to the Assyrian Empire came from the Babylonians, who, allied with the Medes, laid siege to Nineveh in 612 BCE. The city fell after a brutal siege, and with it, the Assyrian Empire collapsed. The Babylonians and Medes, former subjects of Assyria, rose from the ashes, establishing the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The Assyrians' military dominance and cultural influence were replaced by the new powers of the ancient world. Though the Assyrian Empire was gone, its legacy lived on. The Assyrians left behind monumental achievements in warfare, administration, and culture that influenced many of the succeeding civilizations. The Persian Empire, for example, inherited many Assyrian military tactics, and the Babylonians absorbed Assyrian cultural elements. Assyrian art and architecture also inspired future generations. The ruins of Assyrian cities, particularly Nineveh, continue to be a source of fascination for historians and archaeologists. Today, the story of the Assyrian Empire is remembered not only for its military might, but also for its cultural achievements. Assyrian art, literature, and innovations in governance continue to inspire people around the world. The ancient empire's rise and fall serve as a reminder of the fragility of power and the enduring legacy of civilization. Though the Assyrians have been gone for over 2 millennia, their impact on history is still felt today.